Women are coming out in droves accusing Donald Trump of doing exactly what he said he was doing to women. Trump denying it, and guess what? He's going on offense. So how will Trump handle the final 4 weeks of the campaign? Well, a senior writer from Politico spoke to people who covered him best here. He joins and he says, buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Then, this presidential race so contentious it's turning into a family feud, pitting brother against brother, friend against friend. We'll show you how bad it's getting out there. Then a look at just how expensive it really is to live in our area and how costly that is to people who want to stay. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this busy Thursday evening. In a minute, we're going to get to the latest on the presidential race. But first, major development in Bridgegate. A New Jersey judge has just found, quote, probable cause to investigate a complaint alleging that Chris Christie was involved in the lane closure scandal. Now, the complaint was filed because of the damning testimony that has come out in the ongoing trial. Prosecutors, witnesses, and their attorneys, they've been saying that the governor not only heard about it, he knew about it, in some cases potentially alleging before it took place, let alone during the event itself. A spokesman says the complaint has no merit for Christie, and he reiterated that Christie didn't know anything about the lane closures before, let alone during. We, of course, will continue to follow. But now we pivot to the presidential race, and it's now only 25 days till Election Day. In the swing states, they're starting to swing very hard in Hillary Clinton's favor. Take a look at these numbers. Hillary Clinton has solid leads in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, and things so bad in Virginia, a state that a lot of times is red. This time, it is going so blue that Trump is basically giving up and pulling out of the state altogether. Now, all this makes House Speaker Paul Ryan very nervous. He apparently is telling donors that Trump is doing worse than McCain did back in 2008, and that was a year when the GOP lost 21 House seats. And all of those polls, they came out before the latest rounds of allegations against one Donald Trump. The GOP nominee and the accusers.
He was like an octopus. It was like he had 6 arms. He was all over the place.
In a bombshell New York Times report, Jessica Leeds said Donald Trump groped her 3 decades ago on a plane.
When he started putting his hand up my skirt, and that was it. That was it. I was out of there.
A former Trump Tower secretary, Rachel Crooks, she told the Times that in 2005, Trump introduced himself in the elevator one day by kissing her on the mouth. The Trump campaign has threatened to sue.
These vicious claims about me of inappropriate conduct with women are totally and absolutely false.
The women, both Clinton supporters, who didn't report the alleged attacks at the time, say they came forward now because of those 2005 hot mic comments obtained by the Washington Post.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the you can do anything.
And Trump's debate denial.
Have you ever done those things?
Have respect for me, and I will tell you, no, I have not.
The treatment of women has become the focal point of the race. Clinton, whose rallies had been interrupted by Bill Clinton protesters, hit the stage in Las Vegas after the New York Times report on Trump.
He doubled down on his excuse that it's just locker room talk.
Now, those are not the only allegations against Trump. Take a listen to former Miss Arizona describing how Trump behaved at the beauty pageant.
He just came strolling right in. There was no second to put a robe on or any sort of clothing or anything. Some girls were topless, other girls were naked. I'm telling you, Donald Trump owned the pageant for the reason to utilize his power to get, around beautiful women.
Now, if you think that's just her take a listen to Donald Trump himself telling Howard Stern how he did exactly what you just heard Miss Arizona said he did.
I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting.
Right.
I want to make sure that
like
everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes.
Classy. All of this, it is setting up for an explosive final few weeks of the campaign. And earlier today, I spoke with Politico's senior writer, Mike Cruz, and he said this is just Trump being Trump, and he expects things to get even uglier. And Michael, you sat down with 5 Trumpologists, if you will, 5 people who've written biographies spanning more than a few decades here as it relates to Donald Trump. And what struck me was the consensus they all had about how he got here, who he was, and also a little bit of an endgame. In short, no one who knows him has been shocked by the meltdown we've seen, particularly in the last 3 weeks. Were you a little surprised by that?
I was not surprised that they're not surprised. I mean, these are people, these 5 Trump biographers that we talked to back in March, and we reconvened them a few days ago. And you're right, the takeaway is they are not at all surprised. This is the man that they said he was. They wrote biographies in the 90s, in the 2000s, in 2015. He is self-obsessed, he is self-absorbed, he is self-delusional, he is a predatory personality, personally, financially, and sexually. And now we know more about that than we ever have, obviously, but this is who they thought he was, a lout and a lech, and the Republican nominee for President of the United States.
I liked, there was a line in there, they said, while unprecedented, it was predictable, talking about his behavior. And in talking about the latest range of charges and seemingly adding to them by the day as it relates to either sexual assault, sexual harassment, or whatever we want to call it, they said the Trump they know, they don't believe it was driven by sex as an act. It was driven by sex as an acquisition, and that's the Trump they all know. And the more you hear from the firsthand accounts of the women, it seems to fit.
Absolutely. He is a dominator, a subjugator. He is an alpha male, and he has been saying this forever, and he's been acting like this forever. And now, due to the level of scrutiny over the last 6-8 months, but in particular over the last few weeks, even few days, we are finally sort of understanding the full extent of the personality we've been watching for the entire campaign and really for the last 40 years. This is a man who's lived an exceptionally public life, and in some ways the fuel for his rise over the course of those 4 decades of his adult life, which is his addiction to attention, is what ultimately is bringing him down right now.
Well, one thing's clear, Michael, and the candidate's almost said it as much himself. He doesn't care about the party, and he doesn't care about any other candidates that he will be impacting here. By definition, all 5 of them all use the same word, narcissistic, and they all said very dangerous. And when you guys asked them what they thought would happen in the last 3 to 4 weeks, they all said scorched earth, very dangerous, and they had some common themes. They think that he's going to play the victim card, and he's going to continuously say the whole system was rigged against him.
He's been laying this groundwork for months, and I think you're seeing it come to fruition because he, like everybody, sees that he is not only going to lose, but almost certainly, unless there's an incredible plot twist, lose very, very badly. He is going to be, once and for all, what he has said he never was, never would have been, a loser, a total loser. And so he has been laying the groundwork to say, I'm the victim, this entire process is rigged. He is going to self-destruct, you're already seeing some of it, and burn everything down around him as well as himself.
When you asked what they were afraid of, they talked about the race card, and they said that while certainly there's been hints of racism, and you can name every ism that we've seen to every ethnic group, but they said he hasn't gone actually as far as he might, and given some of the ugliness we've seen on the trail and in the rallies, there's a feeling he may go there.
There is, and I think we're going to see some really, really ugly things over these next 3 weeks and 5 days or whatever we're at. He has unleashed a latent anger in this country, and it will only get more angry. And what's scary, I think, is that even after November 8th, this is not going to go away. He has stoked something that has always been there, but it is now more explicit than it has been in quite some time. And no matter what happens on November 8th, no matter what he does after November 8th, those folks are still out there, and they're going to be, in some respects, angrier than they ever have been before.
In terms of future plans, as you said, this anger that he tapped into will be there after November 8th. Do you think, especially with who he surrounded himself with the Breitbarts, with the Roger Ailes, with et cetera, or the Barretts, I should say, that there is a media play for him going forward? Do you think that's almost what's going to drive the plan for the next 3 weeks, or does he still think he can win?
I think he might think he can still win because he doesn't really think this way, and he is that self-delusional. He will not. But I think he will continue to lay groundwork for some sort of media career post-election. What that looks like, who knows quite yet. I also think that's almost all he can do at this point. I feel like he has sullied, and the biographers certainly feel this way too, has sullied his brand to such an extent that he can no longer sell what he was selling to the people he's been selling to for decades. His customer base now is his political base, and that is not a small portion of the electorate, certainly not enough to get him into the White House, but a large enough group of Americans who will buy what he's selling. And what he's selling now is a certain ideology, a certain level of hatred. And the best way to get that out there is through some sort of website or radio show or TV network. Who knows what that's going to look like, but first we have 3.5 weeks of this scorched earth campaign, an incredibly ugly moment in the political history and the overall history of this country.
Michael Cruz, again, the piece was really interesting, and I can't urge people enough to read. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And coming up next, we will bring in our political panel. We'll take a look at the race here and what we can expect here over the next 3+ weeks.